I think we sometimes tell ourselves like, it's just going to get better. It's just going to get better. Which, I mean, yeah, like, you know, I'm not saying give up on like what you're doing, but at the same time, it's like, when do you draw the fine line and say, you know what, like, I'm going to try something new? Because the unknown is very scary, but it's also when new opportunity comes in play. So like, you've never made 10 grand, if you've never made 20 grand or 30 grand, it's like, it's not going to happen just like doing the same things you're doing now.
All right, what's going on, ladies and gentlemen, boys and girls? Aaron here from the Remote Closing Academy podcast. And you're like, hold on, you're in person. This is weird. You can see like a little bit lower than usually on Zoom that you see on these episodes. But today we're doing our first ever in-person podcast. And I'm super stoked to introduce you to Daniel. He's on the RCA team. So, you know, every 5 to 7 episodes, we try to bring someone in from the team to give you not only to learn about, you know, what he's gone through and kind of his past, but also give some really tactical advice around remote closing, biggest mistakes, just everything across the board to help you either get started in your remote closing journey or get better and improve. So, dude, welcome.
That's happy, man.
Yeah, man, I'm stoked. It's weird being in person because I'm like, we're always looking at Zoom, but we're at our in-person mastermind in Cabo. So I'm trying to get a couple of them knocked out. But yeah, it's gonna be a good episode. So, you know, as we usually do, you know, just let's take it back before you're doing closing stuff. Like, even because I know Daniel had an agency, which a lot of us have that have transitioned into the closing space. But just yeah, even before the agency, like what was the rundown?
Man, that's been a minute.
Yeah.
About 6 years ago, man. I mean, I got into the agency space because before that I was an aspiring professional soccer player.
Oh, really?
So I pretty much, I mean, at 17, dropped out of high school. I still finished, obviously, online, but I went overseas to play soccer in Spain. So
Nice. How long?
I did that for about 3 years.
Okay.
3 years, was out there constantly kind of traveling, trying to just make it. And I got to play with some pretty nice teams, man. And with some injuries, you know, visa problems out in Europe, kind of found myself back in Florida where I was kind of raised. And so I was playing semi-professional there, and found myself in like a fitness job, kind of 9 to 5, private gym. Probably like 3 people a day would go to his gym. So much time in my hands, and just figured it was just I needed to do something more productive. I knew like school wasn't for me. Parents were like, I was still living at home at that time, so parents were like, if you're gonna live here, gotta do something.
That's they always do that.
So I was probably like 20. I want to say 2021 at that stage, and just really want to try to like figure it out. And like maybe some of you know, I got hit with a YouTube ad saying, hey, if you can make some money, click here. But it was probably one of the sketchiest ads. It was Ty Lopez.
Here in my garage.
And so clicked that, went in a rabbit hole. I was like, you know what do I have to lose? Like, don't want to go to school. And that was the introduction. You know, it was just one of those things where it's like, I didn't know if I wanted to run an agency. I just knew I wanted to do something. And when I dove like head first, I just realized there's a whole world of just more than we can think. You know, a lot of times we just think that there's only like 1 or 2 things online. And when I recognized there was an opportunity to make money, I just dove in, started learning more in these online courses than I was actually paying for college classes. And didn't even finish that program. Just halfway in, I was like, I got to take action. I just got to go out there, start cold calling. When like the business to business, I remember like first talk, just trying to sell. I was just sweating in the car. I was like pumping myself up. I was like putting the music. I was like, let's go.
Yeah.
And then, dude, just went there, and I think it took me 3 months to land my first client as my own business owner.
Yeah.
You know, trying to sell marketing. That was rough, but it's those times that like now you look back and you're like kind of grateful that I went through that, just because you kind of look back and you laugh at it.
And you learn a lot of stuff, and it gives you, I mean, stories to tell too. So do you feel like, because it's interesting, a lot of people that I've talked, well, a good amount of people that we've had on is like they've been, or I mean, Cole's a great example too, is like he wasn't a professional athlete, but he played like football like all through high school, like in college. So do you feel like kind of like that, you know, we talk about like pro athlete mentality. Do you think that's like kind of crept into, like you starting the business and stuff like that?
To some degree, yeah. Like I think the competitive background only gives you that edge of like, I'm gonna prove myself. You know, I'm gonna prove to these people that like, I can do it. So like I said, yeah. I also like, it was just one of those moments where it's like I didn't have a plan B from going to soccer. So it's just like I needed to make something work, and kind of being a 9 to 5, my thing was just, I mean, nothing wrong with it. Like parents had a 9 to 5, like they did their best. Like I kind of like find inspiration in them, but I just didn't want to be micromanaged. That was my thing. It's just like not being to go on a birthday and saying, hey, I'm going to stay an extra day just because like I'm enjoying myself was one of those things where I was like, I got to create something where I can control my time. And so like, I remember working my first 9 to 5, like I was like, oh, I'm going to like, I was telling my parents, oh, like they're not giving me more time. And he's like, my dad was like, welcome to the real world. So I'm like,
What was the 9 to 5?
it was like the gym job I was telling you about.
Oh, yeah.
Yeah, working on that fitness center. It wasn't bad, man. It was like a stepping stone to just making some money. But for me, I don't know. I wanted to figure it out. So I think back to the question, like, yeah, I think just coming from that competitive background, it's almost one of those things where it's like you just kind of go out there head first and just you try to figure it out as best as you can.
Yeah. Okay, so the transition from there, so you jump into the agency, so you get that first client. I guess what happened after that?
You got that first client. It was crazy because I'm a Hispanic background, so going into like it was also like a face-to-face meeting. Yeah. I used to it was normal on Zoom, but got that first client, negotiating in Spanish. It was like crazy. And a month afterwards with the client, I landed my second client, and I was working like kind of in the real estate space. I mean, not real estate, restaurant space.
Okay.
So
rough.
Yeah, margins are low.
Well, I mean, realtors aren't that much better, but
yeah. But so I landed my second client. I was like, all right, at this point, I think I was making like 1,800, 2 clients, and I'm like, wow, like I made it. Yeah. I made it. I can do this. So, parents started bugging me about going to school. I was like, hey, give me 6 months. Like, I definitely am to something. Like, I'm gonna figure this out. Comes January, I lose my first client. So now I go from 18 to back to like I think like 900.
Yeah.
And I'm like, like, what do I do now?
Yeah. It's like a world. I'm a failure.
Yeah. But, I mean, it's those times. I think it's like everybody thinks it's, you're gonna jump in and just like by you going through a program, you're just gonna start making all this money. And it's like what they don't tell you is like for me, I remember the month we scaled to 10K. It took us 28 days, but what they didn't say is that it took me almost a year and like 3 months before scaling to 10K in 28 days. So it's like comes like for New Year's, and I'm just like, all right, like I'm going all in, and hopefully, thankfully I landed another client there, and we started kind of like just slowly starting to grow. But every time like I felt like I took 2 steps forward, I'll take 1 back. So this wasn't consistent growth until I was investing in like small little programs, and I was like, if I'm going to make this a career path where I'm gonna make a lot of money, I can't treat it right anything less than that. Like, hey, if you want to drive a fast car, you're gonna put fast points. So it's like I got to get the best knowledge, and that man going out there and spending a lot of money into the right person.
Yeah.
So
how is the like? I'm just from a personal standpoint. Like, my parents haven't my dad specifically. So I come from like my dad was in the military, so he's just like all with like a traditional background of like you gotta go to school, you gotta go to college. Same thing that you said. It's like, if you're gonna live in the house, you gotta be either in school or you gotta have a job. And did you ever have anything where like they kind of like just didn't really understand like the money that you're making online, and they still kind of like either not necessarily didn't trust you, but they were just like scared for you type of thing?
I'm sure like they were. I know like when I was gonna play soccer, it was almost like same thing. It's like, you gotta finish your last this thing. And I remember like dad kind of had a conversation with my mother. She's like, let her figure it out. Because I was always that person. I was always like curious and always questioning. So like, like what if it doesn't work out? Well, like can always go back. Like I always had like a rebuttal.
Or what if it does? Yeah.
Yeah. But I was like, what if it does? So just like you kind of gotta be a little bit. And I don't want to say delusional, but like you gotta have some level of like belief that it's gonna turn out, whether you see it a month or 2 or not. Like I didn't see the agency grow after like a year and 3 months. And we skyrocketed because I was like, all right, like even when it was shaky, I was like, I'm still willing to go even a step further and invest like a lot of money, which most people would be like, like after a year, like it's not really working. Let me go hop on another different vehicle, which I think is like, like kind of a mistake a lot of people do. Also keep in mind it's a very complex vehicle running an agency. Yeah. It's not like closing or setting, which is like you're doing one task. Running an agency, you got to do 10 things.
Yeah. Yeah, I mean, that's such a huge thing. And like, elements of what you just said in terms, I mean, when you boil it down, it's like patience and like just setting the right expectations. But back to what you just said is like, you know, the other like gurus that are selling you like Amazon FBA, drop shipping, whatever, is like they tell you like, oh yeah, you could make like a ton of money, but it's like to get you into their programs, they're like, oh yeah, it's gonna be quick and like that type of stuff. But you know, I'm sure you do the same thing like on all your sales calls. Like I'll never say in a podcast or a video like this is a quick way to make money. Like there are people that come in and they crush it, but like that's a, you know, percentage of the people that do come in, and it's like they're learning a brand new skill set. And just like anything, it's like if you're gonna start playing soccer or if you're gonna, you know, start, I don't know, dancing or whatever, it's like you're not gonna just get it right off the bat. It's like you learn a ton of stuff, but then it gets easier as you pick up like a lot of the fundamentals. So that's a huge part I want people to take away.
Yeah, I agree with that. I think I mean, I'd never say it's gonna be easy. I'd sometimes even like say, hey, this is gonna be hard. Like, you sure you want to do this? Just because it's like, I mean, that's a mentality you gotta come with. And obviously there's vehicles to vehicles. I think in an agency you gotta do 10 different things and learn 10 different skill traits, like sell a client, manage a client, get results for a client. So it's like the time for you learning all those things takes away from the focus of just selling, which is why I think like this business model is so lucrative for someone just maybe starting off, or even in the standpoints like you're kind of fed up running the business and you're just like, I'm spinning my wheels. Like I'm not taking home what I want to. I'm kind of frustrated. I mean, someone starting off, obviously I think it's just like, hey, focus on one thing, or someone who's been running a business for a while and just, they're not where they want to be. And it's kind of one of those things, they're not feeling fulfilled anymore. It's kind of like a shift. It's like a quest. I see life as a game. It's like, we'll go on the side quest because it's like, I think it's just going to be a lot more lucrative for you and maybe find more fulfillment like God did.
Yeah. Okay. So you're in the agency, and then so you're doing restaurants, and we were talking before that you've made a transition to real estate. So like what made you transition from restaurants into real estate, and like what was that side quest?
Yeah, that was interesting because I mean it's kind of like right before New Year's. And
what years for traffic?
This was, I think, 2018 going into 2019. I'm deciding I'm going all in, like after losing my first client. And I get a hit up like from a close, my colleague, and she was like, hey, someone kind of called in my university looking for advertising. And I was like, whoa, I do advertising. So it's like passing me the number. And so I call this real estate agent, and I'm like, I think going from like brick and mortar, like chiropractors, like restaurants, like it's a whole different game in the real estate. Because I think the marketing is just like somewhat, it's a
higher ticket and like longer sales cycle.
Yeah.
A lot, yeah.
So I was like, I'm going to figure it out. And I call them, I start kind of saying, hey, I can help you out, things like that. So we finally land a meeting, and longest process. I think like closing for like in a span of 2 months and a half, like just, we had 3 meetings. And when we finally closed was like New Year's, like literally the first, I looked at my phone, I have an invoice paid, and the guy's just like, hey, let's get this. So I'm like, yeah, like we're back growing. But this time I was like, I'm going to stick with maybe real estate because of the, like the bigger high ticket, you know? It's like restaurants, just the margin is so low. You got to like kind of sell in the value long term. So that's how I got into real estate. And I started liking it more just because it's like more of the business world. And you know, the reason why for me, I think I had an easy transition to like wanting to grow or do something online was I kind of lost myself in a sense, like I did playing soccer. Soccer, like I woke up, I played, went to gym, came back, probably like took a nap, played again. Whereas the agency was like, wake up, go to his 9-to-5 job and just figure shit out. And all day I would just be trying to figure it out. So I kind of lost myself in the same realm. And I think just that helped me push through, right? Than most maybe average person that would have been like getting frustrated because it's not happening as quickly as they wanted to.
Mm-hmm. What would you say? Because I think that's there's multiple times we've kind of talked about that. What would you say to someone that's like in that kind of that same like rut, or like maybe in that same mindset of like they don't have the experience that you have of knowing that it's going to take a little bit longer and you've set the right expectations? Just any maybe advice that you would give to someone that is in that position? They're like, it's not happening fast enough. Like, you know, I need to have it. Like, what would you say?
Well, I think I heard this quote once. I think it's from Tony Robbins. And he was saying like a lot of times we overestimate what we can do in 3 years,
and underestimate what you can do in like 6 or something.
Yeah, like when we underestimate what we can do in 5 or like, you know, a little longer. And so like even if it does take you an extra 3-6 months, it's like, hey, you're still gonna get to the destination at some point. Like you always gotta believe you got it. Like you're going to, you know? So it's like whether it takes you an extra 3 months, like great, like now you made it in a sense, right? To that destination. I think it always continues growing.
Yeah.
But like that's my biggest advice. Is just like if it's not happening yet, like like reassess. Like okay, am I just working mindlessly, just putting all this time and effort and like hard work to it, or am I actually being efficient? How can I maybe get better? Like how am I doing this? I just start questioning, asking the right questions. And it's kind of like in life, like I think it's just your reality is in this sense of like the questions you ask yourself. So if, like the better questions you're asking yourself, the better answers you're gonna find. You're probably going to be able to improve much faster and speed up the result.
Okay, sweet. So you go through, you're still working with the real estate agent. So what was like that process? And like, I guess, did you scale quickly? Like, I guess maybe like biggest like bottlenecks, I guess you saw with working with them.
Yeah, just, I mean, it's just in general, like running an agency, again, running a business, starting off, it's good creating your own thing, but at the same time, I think if someone's starting off, like just learning one skill set, like sales, it's one of like the most lucrative things you can do because it can go in so many directions, like high ticket closing, or now you're good enough to actually bring in clients consistently. And that was our biggest bottleneck. Like sales just wasn't there. So it's like we would close a client and I wouldn't close another client for maybe in a month or two. And by the time that 2-3 months have passed by, I've lost that client and I'm just now signing a new one. Yeah. So it's like, it's like, back and forth, man. To the point, like, again, we, most people probably would have been like a little bit scared. And I was also scared very, very much. Is like, am I like in the right vehicle? Not kind of question myself. But I decided to go all in and I invested into a high ticket program. And so this time, it was like, one-on-one mentor, coach, and like that's really a thing. Like combined with already all the things I already knew, and like my ambition of just like I'm gonna make this work. We scaled up. This was like fast forward to October of that year, so 2019, to about 10K within 28 days.
Nice. So what were you before? So you were at like 1 or 2?
Yeah, I was like 2, like 1 to 2, maybe 3 at most, and then we'll always go back. So from like 2-ish to like 10K within 28 days, and that's like the figure everybody in the online space is just kind of like, oh, I hit that 10K.
Yeah, it's actually funny. I was thinking about that the other day, because back when I had I'd started my first agency. I started Dio Rob Quinn.
Yeah,
I heard the name. So back in the day, like he was like we were both like kind of starting at the same time, and I remember starting a series with him. Like at the time, like everyone was like 10K, 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 and like a lot of the Facebook groups were like 6-figure agency. It's like, and then obviously over the years, like 7-figure agency, 8-figure. Like everyone just like he was like leveling up, and I specifically remember making like a series that was like 50K a month agency or something on my YouTube channel. And it was just like, it's just kind of cool to look back. But like back to your point, it's like 10K was like that kind of like gold standard. Like if you hit that, it's like, oh, you made it. But like I'm sure you run into the same thing too, but like in entrepreneurship, it's like, we're never satisfied. And it's like, you hit the 10K and you're like, well, I hit 10, like what can I do now? It's like you hit 20, you hit 50, and it's like you're always like trying to beat yourself.
That's true. Especially in an agency where like not everything's profit. 10K is revenue. Yeah. So it's like, what are you really taking home? Yeah. So after that, you're like, oh, I need more.
Yeah. I mean, I tell the story all the time, but we, with the real estate agency, we went from like 0 to 80 grand a month, probably in like 3 months, like 3 or 4 months. But I had 2 business partners. We were spending a ton of money on ads. And I was like at the end of it, I was maybe making like 4 grand a month. Like it was like not good. And then tenancies and like all that stuff. So it was not what it was made out to be. It was not 80,000 a month. So, okay. So you're working with realtors, and then I guess what was that transition from that into, doing the sales stuff a little more full time?
Closing. Yeah. So that was like ending 2019. Who to know that 2020 was going to be a shakeup year?
Yeah, exactly.
So, but I had that realization too, like coming to end of 2019, starting 2020, I was like, what I paid myself, like after reinvesting into like mentors, taxes, like ads, like all that stuff, I was like, I could have probably worked at like a fast food chain and like made more money and less stress and less time than I would have just did now. But it's almost one of those things again. Like I really look at life like a game, and I was like, I mean, it was a fun year. Let's see what we can do next year. But now, like, let's take the best takeaways. Obviously, learn from what we did wrong and things like that, and like let's really implement that this year. But instead of like working hard, let's work more efficient. So starts off the year to a blow. I remember we had like one of the best ads like ROI. We put like $1,400 into ads. It was like $1,500 and we got like about 20K back.
Nice.
Yeah. So I was like, I figured out.
All this.
I'm like, that's it. I got the formula. Gonna go ahead and put all this money to ads. And then that was I mean, we obviously started scaling up like that, and then COVID hits hard. Real estate space not considered essential. Ads start flopping. Clients literally overnight. We probably had a bunch of emails. I mean, I think we had probably 20, almost a little under 30 clients, and all the emails started flooding in, like cancellation, pausing. We lost almost like 90% of our clients overnight.
Oh man.
So that was rough. And that was like the shift for me. That I was like, I don't know if I'm enjoying this anymore. Like, am I truly doing this because I want to grow a business and I'm passionate about growing a business, or like am I really doing this because like I just want to make money online? And the answer was clear. It's like I just want to make money online. I wasn't kind of passionate about selling to real estate agents and doing that stuff. So that's when an opportunity came in. I was in the same high ticket program that I bought. It was like a 10K program. They were looking for a closer, and at the time, I was like very well connected to mentor. I was just kind of like also like, hey, like I don't know if I should like run my agency or not. And he was like, listen, like you have the skill now already to do it. Worst things worse, you go back, and maybe the next stage of what you're gonna do doesn't work. And that is like what I tell a lot of people, myself, because like worst case that it just doesn't turn out like you wanted to, like you already have whatever you've been doing for the past few years under your belt. Yeah, it kind of sucks. You maybe wasted a little time, but it's like, it goes back to what if it turns out better than you thought. And so I jumped into that team, and team was full of savage. And I was like, I came in, I was super intimidated, and I was like, again, the athlete mentality, I'm going to prove to myself or to prove to others that I can stay in this team, It's like, I'm going to be able to perform. And yeah, like that's how I made that transition into what we call high ticket clothing.
Yeah, there's a lot of stuff that you mentioned. I think the biggest thing is just because even still at this point, it's definitely over the last year has become more like known in terms of like remote closing and appointment setting, stuff like that. But back to what you said is like I was never really passionate about, like I loved helping realtors because it was like us doing what we did, like generate leads, like as a byproduct, they would get more business, like provide for their family, whatever. But like I was never a real estate agent. So yeah, like I can't, I attempted to get my license with the fake and much like time. But it was like, I was never a real estate agent. So I couldn't ever really like fully connect with that person. Yeah. But when it's like kind of the transition to what we do now is like, I was an agency owner. I was someone that thought that you have to own a business to make like CEO level money, right?
Yeah.
But when you kind of make the realization that like, this kind of opportunity is you get all the I wouldn't say all the upside and none of the downside, but I mean, I always talk about how we're literally getting paid to learn, and like you get paid to learn, and like business owners, like they, instead of having to spend $1,400, is like the business owner pays for the calls, and you just take the calls.
Yeah.
And you take the calls and you bring it back to the, the sales team leader, whatever, and they're literally just telling you how to get better and how to get really good sales. And then back to what you said is, if you do decide like, hey, down the road, I want to start an agency, not only do you have the skill set that you need to like grow the business, but you also have capital, which you kind of need.
There you go.
in order to build a business. So yeah, I think that's the kind of the underrated thing that no one really
talks about. Yeah. I mean, even like current business owners, like in a sense, I already had a business, and I knew like I could have maybe gone back and restructured it and like done the same process. Like, I'm going to make this time better. I think we sometimes tell ourselves like, it's just going to get better. It's just going to get better, which, I mean, yeah, like, I'm not saying give up on like what you're doing, but at the same time, it's like, when do you draw the fine line and say, you know what, like, I'm going to try something new? Because the unknown is very scary, but it's also when new opportunity comes in play. So like, you've never made 10 grand, if you've never made 20 grand or 30 grand, it's like, it's not going to happen just like doing the same things you're doing now. You know, so it's like it could, but it's like there's going to be switches, you're going to be a different person, things like that. So for me, like going into remote closing is one of those things where it's like it kind of brought the adrenaline back of like something new, and then like again like what if it's possible. And I still had the agency of a few clients here and there, so I like a little bit cushion. But I go back to your point, yeah, like it's one of those things where you don't have to put the risk up front. In a sense, it's like you take a bet on yourself, because like if you're doing this and like you are going to invest into a coach or a mentor to teach you sales, which I recommend, it's like that's like you putting money into yourself, which is the best investment you can really do at the beginning stage, just as you build capital, and then obviously you can look at real estate, passive income, things like that.
Yeah. Another thing that you mentioned that I think is really important for people to understand is like you never know what's going to come from like the decisions that you make today. Right. So like back, in what you were talking about is you're going to school and you saw an ad and you decided to click the ad and then like jump into that course, and then going into the course, you started the agency, and you went through the agency, you switched to real estate, you went from real estate, and then that's how you got like through that investment to the higher ticket coach, you then created those relationships to then like kind of jump into that. So you never like, there's so many little things that wouldn't have happened if you didn't like bet on yourself at the begining.
There you go. Yeah. It's, I mean, I talked to a lot of people in RCA, like, like current salespeople, people obviously just getting into sales. And a lot of people like neglect training because like they feel they don't need it. But, a lot of times it's not just the training, it's the connection. It's the leverage you have, because it's like a lot of times, and this is what so on that offer, like I ended up making a lot of money. And it wasn't because I was the best on the team. Like there's actually people that had 2-3 times the experience I had in the industry already, like as far as selling. But what I did have is obviously like a hunger that I was going to like make it happen. But at the same time, I had the leverage to get on the offer in the first place. And it was a really good offer. So being that it was a really good offer, if I wouldn't have had that connection, I probably would have not gotten an offer, which I would have started in a lower-end company, try to work my way up. And, obviously that's a struggle that some people go through because like they're trying to figure out themselves. But hey, if you have someone who can help you, just get in the right opportunity, that's 50% of the work. Finding the right company.
Yeah. Back to your point, I want to say this like anyone that's watching this, but it's like if it boggles my mind sometimes when, someone that will like come on a sales call and they're like, yeah, I like have everything that I want. It's like, well, then why are you on the call? It's like we had everything, we wouldn't be talking. So if you're watching this video and you're like, no, I don't need training, I don't need help, like humble yourself a little bit, at least have the conversation and keep an open mind, because it's again, so many different things can happen from it. So okay, so you were how long were you in that offer? And then if you don't mind, like I love giving people like an idea of like income potential and stuff. So I guess what was like maybe your best month like in that?
Yeah, my best month on that offer was about 18K.
Nice.
18K, and
so it was a good offer. How long did it take you to get to like that?
Yeah, it was a good like 5 months, because I started off like kind of taking a few calls and ramping up. So for month 1, I made like $4,000. I remember that. Then like 7, then 9, and then like 12, and then like boom, we hit it.
Dude, like just I don't mean to cut you off, but like that's such a good point of, it's like the compound effect, right? So in that like first year, right, where you weren't really like making a ton of money, it's like you were learning all the skills that you needed to in order to get to a point where your income is then like exponentially increased, right? Because like you're talking about corporate America, it's like you gotta work for like 5 years to get $1 increase per hour, right? Where you were getting, $4,000, $7,000. It's like you're getting thousands more per month because we're getting better. So sorry to cut you off.
No, you make a great point. I think, and I mean, if there's one thing I can like tell people that are already selling is like don't neglect development over performance. Because the performance is going to come because of the development that you're doing.
Yeah.
So it's like, that's like the one thing I knew is like, I needed to perform, and like, I needed to show myself that I was going to like be worthy of staying in this team, but I never stopped like working on myself. And I think that's like what a lot of people sometimes do. And when they do find a good company and like it's a high performing company, it's like, oh, like I got to put the extra hours to like maybe make more sets, more closes, which, you do in a sense, like you want to make your mark. But like if you're taking 10 calls and closing 2 people, and I'm taking 5 calls and closing 2 people, the same, we're making the same money, I'm just more efficient. And so like the question is always, how can I become like more efficient? How can I become better? So the time frame I am working I'm like killing it. So that was always my train of thought. It's like, because like agency is like 10-hour days, 12-hour days, you know? Coming
At the
into
minimum.
yeah, and coming into this, it's like, I mean, I didn't have the mentality starting off, and that's the thing where a lot of people is like, oh, I just want to make money, like work less. Like, great, like that should be a goal, but just know that like, if you're gonna get in the online space, it's gonna require time, effort, and so at the beginning that might not happen right away. Like I was still, taking my 6 calls a day, 7 calls a day, and then still putting in 2-3 hours worth of training. So I was still doing a 10-hour day, but I saw that as the longevity of like reducing my time frame of like how much time I really have to take calls.
Yeah. So from that point, or actually before we make the transition, I want to make it a little more tactful of like, so in that, the ramp period, what was maybe your biggest challenge that you see? So what was your biggest challenge, but also a challenge that you see other people that jump into sales kind of like struggle with, and maybe just like how to get out of that or not make the same.
Biggest challenge? That's a great question. I mean, for me, making the transition from an agency to now a closer, it was like a relief now because one, like obviously now I was taking home money, like everything that I made was profit. Obviously the time frame that I put into, I saw direct ROI, and I didn't have to, working with employees, things like that, or just team members. I think the biggest challenge I faced, was going back to not thinking like the old self of like more hours equal like better performance. Because again, like there was a period where like I was scaling up and then performance started kind of going down, and like I didn't forget how to close overnight. So like what was happening, it was like I was way too attached to like making more money. I was way too attached to like again the outcome. And I think a lot of salespeople, even like veterans at times, we sometimes get too caught up into like the idea of making like more and more and more.
Yeah.
So we start getting too attached to like selling and at the outcome itself, the goal in general. And I think if you start seeing things as transactional, I'm not like, hey, I'm actually here, like I'm helping others, I'm kind of grateful. It kind of plays into your performance very heavy. So that was my biggest challenge, is like, how do I now like that I'm making all this money and I know there's a pathway to make even more. How do I still continue like wanting to be in this cause for the people and showing up for them, opposed to just having like selfish reasons being me?
Yeah, that's a good point, and something that I'm sure not a lot of people really kind of get or like know how to get over. That's super helpful. So what was so transition, so you're working on that offer, I guess. How do you transition into, I guess, this company, and like what was the
working with goal?
Yeah.
That was a good transition. So, I mean, a year in, probably a little like I think it was like a year less than that offer. Things started kind of changing at that offer, like management switches. CEO was kind of stepping back, signing up like a CEO, and I was kind of just not in alignment to where they're heading, and just kind of some of the changes. And so that was the cool part, which was like, now that I was like, crap, like here we go again, like gonna have to make a transition or like maybe figure something out new. This time I wasn't scared. Obviously, like I would say change is always a little scary, but this time I was like, I now know I have a skill and I'm good at the skill. I have a track record, like obviously I've made some cash. There's obviously other companies that need my help.
Yeah.
And so, I was in the same offer as a colleague, one of my best friends, Temple. He actually works for a company as well. So we're both calling the same offer. And I think at the time he left to work Cole like a little bit sooner. And I transitioned out to work with a different company with the lead way of like now becoming like a sales manager, And so that's how I first like landed that job. Same thing, like kind of like now well known with the skill set, with the track record. It was like a little bit easier now to just come in and find a job. And I worked there for like a few months, like 9 months. Great offer too, like still made 6 figures. I was only with them like about 9 months, so still like surpassed 6 figures with them. But it just wasn't an industry I was passionate about, which was like marketing, back to the marketing space. But helping like, like beauty professional, things like that, which was good. But for me, I just didn't find myself like waking up and again, like wanting to like help this person, this avatar. And I was kind of doing the service to the people I was talking to. Yeah. So that's when I was like, all right, like I have a skill, but I also want to find something I'm passionate about. And yeah, I was in a UFC fight. I was in a UFC fight in Vegas. Cole was out there as well. And we kind of just like bumped into each other. It was kind of letting him know like, hey, I'm also looking for like an offer. Like, I'm kind of planning like what's my next move. And at the time, he had like an open position, I think, recruiting him maybe in the next 60 days for a closer. And I was like, yeah, like I'll be open to exploring that. And yeah, we made the connections, hopped in the interview, and the rest was history.
Nice. That's so. I mean, even back to the decision thing, it's like you can't make that up. Like you can't make up like meeting someone in person. But that also goes back to like just how I think a common misconception, at least from people that I've talked to and like a lot of questions on like YouTube videos, is is there like actually companies out there hiring for for this type of thing? Like because it's like we know because we've been in the online space for a handful of years, so it's like we know how many online companies there are, but other people don't really understand that. But it's just like there's so many companies. I mean, the event we're at right now, there's over 150 like 7 to 8 figure business owners that are looking for actively looking for leaders, closers, salesmen. Like it's insane how much is out there. And back to your point of the just the different types of offers is like you were doing like an agency growth offer, and then video professionals, like marketing stuff, and then now kind of like what we're doing now is there's no drought of like different types of offers. So when people come in, it's like if you want to do something around spirituality or dating or making money online or marketing or whatever, it's like back to what you said too about like being passionate about is like there's almost I can almost guarantee there's an offer for whatever you're interested in.
100%. And I mean, just jumping in there because like I remember like obviously this was 2020, so about 3 years ago, so I'm still kind of like remembering everything. But it's funny, I mean, obviously I met Cole and it was just like a random person, kind of backtrack a little bit. In that first offer, again, because I had leverage connection to get in that offer, they actually became one of Cole's clients. And this was Cole when he was just starting to kind of scale up the B2B side. And so Cole used to actually do like one-on-ones with the sales team. He was the one training the sales teams. I remember like I was just that person that like as soon as we had the opportunity to get like a call review or like especially obviously someone who was like very well known in sales, I was like, here you go, I'm the first. And so I remember him reviewing some of my calls, and I think that's like also for existing like salespeople or maybe like trying to say like, how do I get better, or like, do I really need training? It's like, you just don't know what you don't know. And at the time I was making about 12 grand, and Cole reviewed one of my calls and he was like, dude, like, this is brutal. This is bad. Like you can't even speak. He's like, you can't even speak. And I was like, whoa. I was just like blown out. But it was because of like taking that criticism and like putting myself in this opportunity where, yeah, I had like the blessing to be in this company that obviously invested with Cole. But if I hadn't, like, I would have gone out there and invested myself to get kind of crushed on how do I like, rebuild myself to get even better. And I think that's what a lot of people like is just, again, that development that leads to more money. It's like, hey, the better you get, more money's going to come. It's not always about, how do I find a new offer? How do I find like better opportunity? So that was how I kind of met Cole. And so when we ran into USV, I mean, he knew who I was. He was like, hey, what's up?
Yeah. That's awesome. Okay. So I guess at this point, how long have you been on the team? And I guess just overall experiences and maybe some tips you would give to like newer closers or maybe anyone that's in the sales space of like just like things of like, here's some tips to like ramp up, like see quicker success, stuff like that.
Yeah, I've been with Cole now on the team for about a year. Yeah, I think it was like a few days ago, it was the year mark. And I mean, the ramp up for me was pretty fast. Like I need a drill now. But obviously being around the team, seeing new people come, obviously some go, I've seen that like what helped me get to the level of the group where I came in and like started crushing out the gates of the water was like what I've been kind of mentioning was like, hey, I'm gonna make sure that I'm gonna be a sponge to like learning everything that Cole has to offer, because now I'm like in the best high ticket closing space to learn. So it's like, even though I was still considered really good now, making a lot of money, had a good track record, I just never had an ego to say, hey, like I can't learn. And like that's one of the biggest things I think like Mitch, who's the president of the company, like I've seen like his like what he's made and where he's gotten, and like the person that's making 20 grand thinking he's like the best in the world, right, is never gonna be at 40. Or the person that like thinking that he's the best at 40, he's never gonna be at 60. So I came in like with a very humble mentality, trying to learn from everybody, knew I would like just crush, but at the same time, like how can I just soak everything up and then craft my own formula to success? And so again, it goes back to not neglecting development and growth for goals. I always think like if you want to grow, don't focus on the goals, how much you want to make, like, you know, your closing percentages, or like how many closes you want. Just focus on the growth. The goals are just going to come because of the growth.
Yeah, I love that. So what would you say, because I don't know how much we're at this point. We have to go back to the presentation here soon. But what would you say to someone that is, maybe kind of in that, say, like similar situation of, maybe they're running a business right now, and, they are kind of like open to the idea of maybe like transitioning to be a closer. Like what, I guess, I'm sure you talk to a lot of people like that. So like what's like the conversation that you usually have to help them understand, like, yeah, it's cool what you're doing, but like there's a lot of opportunity out there as well.
Yeah, I mean, if you're kind of it's really two like boats you're on. It's either like you're in a position, whether it be a 9 to 5 or in a business that like maybe you're making decent money, but you're not 100% satisfied. I mean, one thing is being happy, and another thing is like, I know I'm not fully satisfied. Like I can still obviously maybe make more, feel like I can make more. I mean, that kind of just brings frustration if you don't really, as just a person, pursue that and see where your potential can be. So if like if you're in that vehicle, I would say it's like try something new, right? Because at the end of the day, if like you fully are aware of where you're trying to go, you're just not there. Yeah, you can keep telling yourself it's gonna get better, but at some point you gotta get real with yourself and say, hey, like, what's the worst thing that can happen? It's like, what's the worst thing that can happen? I can always go back and do this. And it's like, if you have clear in a sense of what you want, like I think clarity is very important. A lot of people say, I just want to make more money. Well, great. Have you sat down and have you gotten clear of like, well, what would you do with that money? Oh, I'm going to invest in real estate. I mean, for what? To make more money, just to make more money, to make more money. So it's like, you got to get clear on why you're doing stuff, because with clarity, you're going to be able to move just more tactically. It's like, hey, does it make sense for me to make this jump right now? That's like my biggest recommendation I always tell people. It's like, hey, there's obviously a reason why we're on this call. Like if everything's so good, it's like, you wouldn't be even like back of your mind thinking, clicking an ad. Yeah. It's like, there's something going on that maybe it could just be that you've been in the same spot for the past few years, and you just kind of lost a sense of growth, of like putting yourself on the edge of like that challenge again. And it's like, that's what I love about this industry, because it's like commissions aren't capped. So it's like, there's always an edge on next step. Like you can hit 20 grand and be like, great, now I'm my biggest competitor, right? How can I get next month even higher or even continue growing? And so that's what I love. Like you're always on the edge in this industry, because it's like, you got to perform. If not, there's hundreds, thousands of other people like ready to take that goal. But it's at the same time, there's also a sea of opportunity that it's like, if you continue developing yourself, more opportunity is going to come, whether it be your organization or you're going to go into leadership positions. And so I just think the growth potentials in this industry, man, are so high. And going back to like a lot of times, like business owners, like, what are you really taking home? Like, yeah, you might like be sexy numbers on papers, but like, what are you actually taking home? Because I know for an agency, for me to be bringing in 20, even 30 grand a month, right? Just take home profit to my pocket. I know as an agency, I'd have been bringing in at least bare minimum, 60 to like 80 grand a month, just after expenses, minimally, to be taking home profit to your pocket, pay out 30 grand.
Not to mention the stress of like running an $80,000 business.
Daily con.
Yeah, you got to weigh like both sides. Yeah.
So that's where I'd say that bucket. Obviously, the other bucket is like the people that are never really, maybe haven't found the right vehicle yet. Like maybe they're 9 to 5. They want to aspire like to do something different. Maybe it's the first thing they're going to step into, or they've tried a couple of things and it just hasn't gone their way. So it's like, I get it. You've been to a restaurant, you got food poisoning. So it's like, do you really want to go back? But I would just say it's like those type of people. It's like, I was there once too. And it was like, for me, it was the agency, and I got to work extremely hard. But it's like, if you're in that stage, I always like to say, it's like, you just got to keep on going till you figure out, right, like the vehicle for you. And I think just right now in the age we live in, there's no more simpler way, I believe, to get online and make money, whether it be setting for a different company or closing for a different company. It's like, again, they take the risk. They're doing, they are giving you a lot of trust. That is why the skill is important, but they do majority of it, the fulfillment, and your goal is to really just do one task.
Yeah.
And that is
Really good at it.
really good at it. So it's like, if you're in that stage, 100% would recommend like just getting into the space, right? Seeing, I don't know, a lot of times I got discouraged when I would see other people like, damn, like they're really making 20 grand, like 30 grand. Like, it's not really like realistic, but it's like what I used to live before. I used to think this reality of what I'm doing now is unreal. And now I see people doing 3 times as much as I'm making. And I'm like, great. Like, I now know, like, it's just it's a little different reality of what you currently live in. And if no other people around you is doing it too, my brains didn't run a business. They were 9 to 5. So it's like, I kind of just had to make my own path in a way. And by you embracing that journey and just taking a chance on yourself, not letting other people install doubt, like, I just think that the sky's the limit, but there's a lot of opportunity out there.
Mm-hmm. What would you say? This is probably like the last main question, and we'll kind of transition out. But what do you think is the biggest objection that you get on like your sales calls of like people that are, I mean, basically objections that anyone that's listening to this to be like, no, like, should I look at the call? Like, should I have a conversation? Like, what's the biggest objection you see?
What in reality, like, I would say, like, you know, a lot of people like try to handle objections like, oh, think about it, spouse, fire. I think it really just comes down to uncertainty. Uncertainty, and like that can like obviously sprout into like a few roots, like, you know, uncertainty in whether it be finances or uncertainty in themselves or uncertainty on the opportunity itself. So it's like when you get clear on like where the uncertainty is going, you can really tackle that, right? And explore why that's there. You know, if it's money, well, okay, what's the uncertainty there? You know, did you invest, not have a great opportunity? Are you limiting resources? So like you're very cautious of what you're doing, right? If it's uncertainty on you know, confidence in themselves, like why, right? And same thing goes on the process. You know, it's like, hey, if this wasn't something that to some level of degree really interested in you, you wouldn't really be exploring it this far. You wouldn't be watching podcasts. You wouldn't be like clicking an ad or considering doing it. So it's like, you know, if it's uncertainty on the product, that's okay. You know, obviously there's millions of people that can kind of help you. You probably see all these ads. I can help you. I can help you, right? Just get clear. You know, get the data organized. Like, what is the, you know, like, what does this person do? How can they help me? Do I feel like they matched like what I'm looking for? And if it is, great. Like, let's jump at it. So it's just really, I think the biggest objection is uncertainty, just kind of going back to that and just knowing how to navigate that to see which of the routes is that person experiencing it.
Sweet. So give you a last question. So here's what I'll do. I want you to give just like your biggest like piece of advice, tip, golden nugget you would give to someone that's, and I'll give you like 30 seconds to think about it. I'm going to do the outro, but biggest piece of advice that you would give to someone that like, and it could be any type of avatar, whether it's someone that's currently in remote sales, someone that's thinking about it, just like biggest tip that you would give. I'll do this outro and then give me an answer. So those of you that are listening, I mean, up to this point, kind of what we were just talking about is like, you know, if you've made it this far into this episode, there's a good chance that like, you should probably just have a conversation with us, or at the very least, in the description down below, you know, on the podcast, in the show notes, there's a link to a video, and that's just going to break down more or less what remote closing is, appointment setting, how I'm a business partner, Cole, got started. Was able to go from like making 50 grand a year up into making over, you know, more than a neurosurgeon in 12 months by leveraging what we're talking about, remote closing, setting, just sales in general. So if you want to check that out, again, there's no obligation to, you know, buy anything on that video. You watch the video, super valuable stuff, take some notes on it. There is some options at the end if you want to jump into like one-on-one mentorship, but literally if you just watch the video, you'll have a pretty good understanding of how to get started and start learning a little bit more about the industry. So hopefully I gave you enough time. What you got?
Yeah, biggest advice, man. I would just say, like, if you haven't already taken a step, take it. Because a lot of times, again, like we set our goals, write them down, you know, like you kind of have someone like you've been telling yourself, like you know, you want to get to the next level, but it's really going to come down to you, like taking responsibility. Step number one is, I always tell people, you're going to have a level of awareness that you're unhappy or you want to do something different. But step number two now is taking the responsibility to do something about it. And that's what I tell most people. It's like, number one counts only for so long. Number two, it's going to be the most important step for you, and that is taking a step forward. So, yeah, like if you guys haven't already, check out the videos, book the call. I 100% recommend it, or at least continue kind of like in this pathway of exploring for just a short period of time. But at some point, you got to take a responsibility to do something different, right? If not, then when?
Yeah. Yeah, we have 30 other episodes at this point of people just like, Daniel, that they've done the exact same thing. They've created, they've gone down the same path. They've really crushed it. So check out some of those too if you want a little bit more information. One more time, down below in the description or in the show notes. But dude, appreciate you coming on. First ever in-person podcast. Aaron here from the Remote Closing Academy podcast. We'll see you guys in the next one. Talk soon.